up here first. Dustin sort of drifts back over to you two. You can tell there's a weight, and he's trying to explain himself, but it's something he sort of has had to build himself up to. The year on Tristan's caravan, it raced by as it will. The excitement. My skills, they were honed beyond anything I could have expected as our journey took us across the continent, and it was my first time through the Vice here. I was hardened to combat and to loss. As often is the case, not all of us who started out actually returned. My excitement grew as we arrived back on the Dragongust Plains with spring in full bloom across those beautiful rolling hills. Summer's heat chased us northward as we passed through Sojourn's Landing and finally up the familiar road to Balathera. We finally approached the lands once cultivated by our community, and then that was it. My contract was fulfilled. I couldn't help but pass through the farms that had been our home, our community, our lives for so long. Places were familiar, but the faces of strangers met my gaze. It was with a wistful smile that I noted that there were no white daylilies blooming beside our cottage. Sarah, having remembered to dig the bulbs up and take them to our new home. I pulled out my map and refreshed myself on the route, and I headed west into the forest. The journey was challenging, but not so difficult that I became concerned that our community wouldn't make it. On the fourth day, I turned north. As was planned, I wanted to travel along a long valley that after a week of travel would hook up and eventually take me to the stream that I knew would flow through our new home. On my final day of travel, I looked to the sky for smoke from cooking fires or other telltale signs of our settlement. But there were none to be found. My heart grew fearful as I approached the site of our village. Terror gripped me as I discovered felled lumber left to rot and half-finished shelters being retaken by vines. Broken tools, spoiled seed seemed to materialize like ghosts out of the undergrowth. In a fugue, I screamed for my Sarah and my Lilly, for anyone, until I collapsed on the banks of the stream, sobbing. In denial, I convinced myself that perhaps this was a different settlement. My family was safe and just somewhere else. And then I saw them. A bed of pure white daylilies surrounding a sunny rock overlooking a pool in the stream. It would be the perfect place for my Lily to spend the days while Sarah worked to build the village, and I knew in my heart that this was all that remained of Tilla's Grove, our collective dream. I retraced my path back to our old home. I arrived and desperately searched for anyone I knew or who had news of our community, but no one was to be found. And all that almost anyone knew was that they went west to start a new village. After a month of searching, as fall approached, I heard a rumor that Augusta, an older matron from our village, was living in a hovel on a farm on the outskirts of Balathera. Days of looking finally took me to the door of her tiny hovel. Augusta led me into the drafty space, separated into rooms only by the tattered curtains hung from rafters. I was in a daze of relief and despair as she sat me down in the drafty space, so flimsy in construction it creaked almost rhythmically with every breath of wind that passed through. Augusta told the story of their journey in arriving at the site of Tilla's Grove, of joyous nights and industrious days, of building shelter and clearing the land. But then, as the last of the frost was leaving the ground and the time of planting grew near, she spoke of a devil that came to the village. covered in demon runes claiming the region as its territory. The men tried to run it off, she said, thinking they had it outnumbered. But soon threats turned to blows, and the devil turned its creatures of fang and claw against them, grievously injuring and crippling the men, destroying the tools and supplies, slaughtering the livestock, and spoiling the seed as well. And then it was gone. But the damage had been done and was irreparable. She spoke of how they fled with all that they could salvage, all alive, but broken. With nowhere to go, and their dreams shattered, it only took days for fear and heartbreak to turn to suspicion and superstition. What had drawn the devil to them? What was the cause of their misfortune? She recounted how glances at Lilly quickly became whispers of the stained ones, and misfortune being drawn to all who harbored them. Sarah tried to speak reason to the people, but those whispers became action all too quickly. Hooded, they came in the night. Augusta with Sarah as they ripped Lilly away from her. Augusta told how she screamed that they would all be damned to the 9 hells if they did this to an innocent. She said Sarah fought like a lioness as they took Lilly, but all heard the crack of Sarah's ankle breaking as she was thrown to ground by the largest of the men. Guilty faces watching for the tents, but not intervening, as Sarah wailed into the darkness, crawling on her knees after them until she collapsed and went silent. By morning, half of the community had slunk off into the wilderness, and by the next nightfall, nothing was left of the dream that was Tilla's Grove. Augusta then looked up at me and looked at the curtain behind me that divided the room, and I realized the creaking I was hearing was not the wind. Shaking, I pulled back the curtain, and there she was, my Sarah, rocking on a stool with a blank stare, wasted away to almost nothing. In her hand she held Lily's baby and a white daylily that looked as though it had just been picked. He just sort of looks to you. That is why, as long as I live, I will stand with you, or do whatever must be done. My Lilly had a baby, and you should have one too.
If everything does go as planned, my child will be named Lilly regardless.
Dustin does just that.
Luna, I think you feel some arms around you, like from behind, as Iska kind of pulls you close and like holds you just so tight, and you can feel as she puts her face to yours, you can feel the tears coming down the side of hers, and she just whispers that I will bend fate and fortune. I will move mountains, and I will bring down temples to make that vision a reality.
Thank you, both of you. And Luna will, if Dustin would allow it, kind of like turn so Iska's on her side and Dustin's on the other, and hug them both.
Okay.